The Voice Teacher Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Voice Teacher Podcast. I am Sam Johnson, and I am here with Aimee, and today we're going to be talking about voice teaching. What are we going to be focusing on, Aimee?
Okay, well, I had a fabulous opportunity last week to sing with some friends. And so I met these folks about, it's going on 11 years now when we first moved out to this area. I volunteered to help out with the city musical and met these wonderful people. He was the music director at the time, and his wife sings fabulously. They're all incredibly talented people. Anyway, recently, in the last few months or so, they started doing these 80s improv nights, and they do it on Facebook Live, and they have a list of about 1,000 songs, and anybody who's watching can just request a song, and they attempt it. Now, this guy is incredible, and he's running all of the sound and all of the cameras. There's multiple webcams set up. They've got a drummer on one end, and he just picks out the music and just like listens to it for a second, follows the chord progression. He's playing all of the music, singing backup while managing all of the cameras and the microphone and everything. It blows my mind. I was going crazy. And
so it's like piano bar turned up to 1,000 difficulty.
Basically. And oh my goodness. So I'm like, yeah, I know some 80s songs. Like I listen to it fairly regularly. They're always playing it at the gym. These are songs I've kind of grown up listening to. And anyway, so we get in there, and I had sent him a list. I'm like, well, here's some that I think I could do okay on, like not totally crash and burn, but you don't have any practice. It's just kind of like, well, sure, if somebody requests that, then I guess we'll try it. But if not, good luck, So luckily I wasn't on lead the whole night, and I'm a terrible backup singer. So, me picking out random harmonies was not going to happen, or trying to remember what the echoes are from the song. Because clearly what I found was I really don't know as much music from the 80s as I thought I did. Like, not at all. Wake me up before you go. Yeah, I don't know that song. I only know that part of that song.
You know that one. Yeah, exactly.
But I did do okay on, I Need a Hero. I had to ask a friend to request something that I knew. I'm like, can you please just request something that I sort of know the words to? And so, it was really interesting. It was fun. It was so fun. And the fact that this is available for all to watch. I mean, if you go to my Facebook page, it's on there. I reposted it. Please do not judge me. I think this is where the voice teacher aspect comes in. When you're a voice teacher, you hold yourself to a very high standard, a very high level of performance. Like, I have to be really, really good. People expect me to just be a top level singer all the time. And this is a situation where it's kind of like karaoke night, except the words are not even flowing up the screen. It's like there's a lyric sheet, and good luck. And he's, improving it on the way too. And your drummer's just going for it. So if you don't know it, oh well,
make something up.
You just have to keep going. And, it was fascinating to me because aside from just the fun factor and the adrenaline factor, I really had to get over myself worrying about what I sounded like. There were definitely notes missed. There were vowels that were out of place. There were things that I would never presume to present in a polished performance. Mm-hmm. There were definite flubs, definite things that I would be fixing left and right if I were my own student and working with them in my studio. But it was really nice to just let go, let my brain go, and to not care. There's this book that I keep seeing that comes up on my Kindle, The Simple Art of Not Giving a fill in the blank. And I'm tempted to read it because I'm like, I think I just kind of have to get to that point sometimes. Just who cares? Just enjoy it. It's okay. It's okay.
But it's a hard thing to do when you're like marketing yourself as an expert in something, yes. Right? And saying like, as an expert, I still don't know everything. Oh my goodness. Goes back to the the talks that we had about imposter syndrome. But it
Yes.
is completely unfair to expect a perfect performance from anyone ever, especially in that kind of situation. So I think something like that, where it's obvious that you're not supposed to sound perfect and polished and like you know everything, because how are you going to have 1,000 songs prepared perfectly like that?
Right.
Well, I'm so glad you had that experience. I think it's really important. And I think that a lot of us teachers don't put ourselves in those roles enough as performer, especially as like improv kind of performer. I see it a lot in the classical voice world of people just being scared to improvise at all. And any opportunities to get people into that, I'm just exploring, I'm having fun, I'm improving kind of mindset, I think can do so much for your confidence when you go do something that you're like polished up a little bit more with.
That's interesting to me because I would think that as a classical singer, I mean, I get why they don't want to. Wait, improving is scary, you know? I hated improv in high school. I hated
Mm-hmm.
it. But when we had to do it for a theater class, it just, oh, that was not fun for me. But it's interesting because as I have so many students interested in riffing these days,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I'm like, I think, man, I wish I had actually a little bit more classical training and learning all of those teeny tiny scales and all those riffs and runs on the classical end, because I think it would make this faster
Mm-hmm.
for me to help my students when we're doing this from a pop standpoint, but the concepts are still the same. So I would think if you had a lot of that training as a classical singer, wouldn't it be fun to improv and
You'd think
like
so, but I
play
think
with that?
there's so much pressure to just do it right in classical
Mm.
world in my experience. Even on a Baroque piece where there is a lot of room for melisma and improvisation, and historically the precedent is you come up with your own things that you kind of fill in on this cadenza or whatever. There are some times where maybe someone in 1940 did it one way and then it got dictated and now everyone learns it that exact way. And even though it was meant as an improv in the beginning, now you learn this one or this one or this one. There are full books full of just, here are the options that you can have. And so a lot of it does become just very rote. You have to do it exactly this way to honor what Mozart thought or to honor what Handel thought. And it, I think, ignores kind of the context of when that music came out and doesn't really let it grow. Not my favorite part of the genre in general. So yeah, using any sort of improv, even by like having a classical person go sing a Beyonce song or something that's obvious that they can just riff a little bit more or make something up, I think that it starts letting them trust themselves a little bit more.
For sure. I love that. Maybe I'll learn classical and then I'll turn it on its ear and sing it all pop. Pop, classical, popical. That would be so good.
Yeah. I mean, learning classical stuff, especially as a soprano, you probably would end up doing some more fast melisma-y kind of stuff, especially if you did say, I'm going to work on just a lot of Baroque music, just
Mhm.
stuff that moves really fast and is super highly ornamented. And if you worked with a classical teacher, preferably another soprano, they would probably have a lot of experience singing that stuff on their own. And I think that you probably would learn how to move your voice really, really quickly. Similar going to sing pop stuff, but I don't think you need it. Like pop riffs, so much of it is really just trusting your ear, right? Of like, I think this will probably work well. And then memorizing enough little building blocks that you can start putting those building blocks in more original ways. But so much of pop music is just like pop riffs are just that over
Mhm.
and over and over again. And so you learn that one piece and then you start listening to people in the genre and you start building off of it. But for people who I'm teaching who want to do more of that stuff, I just start building it into their exercises, into their warm-ups of like, okay, let's just go faster. Let's do this descending pentatonic scale. Let's do a fast major scale. Let's start playing around with this. And I think that just giving permission to like let loose with that in the warm-ups is really helpful. And I can actually start hearing with certain singers like, oh yeah, you're going to be able to move really, really fast. You just have a voice that
Mhm.
kind of goes for that. when I try doing that kind of stuff, it just doesn't move. I just have too big of a voice and I haven't put enough time into it. But when I've spent a lot of time kind of imitating the sopranos and doing just really fast, high head voice kind of stuff really lightly, I can start moving kind of faster. So, there's room for growth for all of us.
That's interesting you say that, because I feel like I'm always one of those people in all areas of my life, except for like overscheduling and planning. I am actually a pretty slow mover. I go to a spin class and I am the slowest pedaler there, no matter how hard I am pushing. I have noticed in my singing, I am just like, I am more of I always thought of myself as like the money note girl, somebody who can hold the big long notes. Like I could belt that out for 10 minutes and just keep going. I'd be fine. But moving really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
yes, has definitely been a challenge. It's something I've really had to dig into lately because so many of my students have been so interested in that, and it's been really fun. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then I notice other areas of my life, I've always been a slow runner or biker, and I always thought, well, I'm just short, that's why. But I think, this has kind of been my theory, that it has to do with the fast twitch fibers in your muscles. And I wonder if certain bodies are constructed in a way that I think some people probably just have maybe a little bit more of a fast twitch in their vocalis muscle, like you might.
I have no idea.
Maybe
That would be a
similar
really
to your quads
really
or
curious
whatever.
question for an ENT. Yeah. We should ask.
And
sometime.
now watch, I'll ask one of them and they'll be like, "That is so stupid. That's not anywhere near what happens. It's like this."
But it's that
like,
curiosity,
okay, but my
right?
theory.
I mean, it's the same thing kind of overlaps with just letting yourself look, quote, silly with something, right? It's like, I'm an expert with this, I should know everything. The only way you're going to keep becoming better and better is asking questions like that maybe someone who is way more experienced than you might think is kind of like a silly question, but like, you have to still ask them. And it's that attitude of curiosity, in the same way of it's this attitude of just exploration, so that we can kind of shape the world as it comes, rather than trying to make the world like what we think it should be. I don't know if that made too much sense, but it's really just taking things as it goes and accepting it and trying to make the best of it. Same thing with asking a question. It's like, I have no idea if this is true. Might as well ask it without the fear of, I'm going to look really dumb. So you don't get to be an expert if you are like constantly thinking, I'm going to look really dumb, especially in front of people who know more than you.
It's true. But I wonder what we'll have to ask an ENT about that. I don't know. I have all kinds of questions and theories. And even if, but I think the important thing is even if that's not true, you look at Seth Riggs, his theories were not necessarily true. They were disproven, but explaining them that way made sense to a lot of people and helped them improve. Yeah. So even if your theory is wrong, it can still be helpful.
Just some context for that. There used to be a lot of talk about the vocal folds zipping up to create sound. That's the main one that kind of stands out to me.
And the dampening. It's kind of the same thing, right?
I still don't really understand that. Like, I just don't get it. But the zipping up, like using that image of for what, low notes, just part of the vocal folds come together, and then the higher you go, more of them come together, or something like that.
It was like a section of the folds was together, and then there was just like a little opening.
Yeah, which is not true. The entirety of the vocal folds usually should be coming together, and then it just kind of stretches to create the higher pitches. And if we were going with that zipping idea, there would always be that posterior gap, right? Where it's just like letting air come through. And that's what gives us a really breathy sound. So it's an unproven thing, or a disproved thing at this point. But there are some things that we're using now that are like not true, just straight up not true, or that we don't understand. But what we're talking about, it's the best that we know. Like, do we know 100% that the vocal folds create harmonics? No, we do not. There is no proof of how the vocal folds create harmonics, to my knowledge, at this point. And there are a few theories.
Wouldn't it be an acoustic thing?
I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
Harmonics are acoustic, right? They're not mechanical.
Right, but I mean, okay, so there's the acoustic, like, yes, these resonances have value, and when different frequencies pass through that, they get dampened or not, if they match that
Hmm.
value of the space or not. But the actual like harmonic series that goes through that we see this, there
Hmm.
we don't know how that happens. We don't know why that happens. And like there are a few theories. There's this researcher, I believe his name is Julian Chen, and I tried reading some of his stuff, and it was just so dense, and I had no idea what was going on. And it's like, it feels like you need to be a PhD in speech science to start understanding these things, because it has not been understood even at that level enough to start simplifying it for us for for this kind of
Give
way.
it to
And
me in
yet we still
English,
talk about
please.
this. We still talk about it all the time, and it's useful. Like right
Well,
now,
right,
from what
because
we know, it's useful enough, but it's going to be disproven probably in the next 20 years, and then we'll have to come up with this again.
but at the same time, does good singing really change? There have been fabulous singers for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, that we have
Hmm.
maybe, the last 100 and oh gosh, do we have records from 150 years ago, recordings of voices?
Not
Are we
really.
that far
Mm-mm.
back? Not yet.
Not many.
So,
Not many.
but about 100. We have about 100
At
years at
least. Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, really, there's been good singing happening all this time when we knew nothing. There's probably been good singing for thousands of years happening before any of this was ever explained or discovered. So
Okay, I lied. So
I love,
the first recordings were made in like 1857, but the quality
right.
at that point was just not very great. And like even when you get to some of the really wonderful singers that we do have record of, and we have like records, the quality of the recording then was so funky. Like it really, you didn't get the full spectrum. And so I had a student
Mhm.
like a week ago bring a song in like that, and she was like, I don't think I can get my voice to sound like this. And I'm like, you won't, because we're missing so much of it. Like, that's not what a voice sounds like.
Mhm.
But it
I'm
still is
curious,
like a
what was the
beautiful
song?
thing.
Yeah, what was
I
the
can't
song?
even remember it. It was interesting. I think it was something out of Star Trek, where there was like a section that was a modern recording, and then it cut to like an old recording for just like 8 bars or something, and then it kind of cut back. And so it was an interesting question of which of these sounds should I be aiming for. And I was like,
Mm.
neither. Let's aim for what your voice sounds like. So circling back to the beginning with the improv that you did, I think that it's really important for us as teachers within every lesson to give people a time, even if it's just like 1 minute, that the goal isn't to like find things to pick apart. The goal is to just make the sound and then pay attention to how you feel after it, and like kind of confront those feelings of, ah, that felt really bad. Is that valid? Like, I thought that you sounded really great. Is that feeling like something that we actually need to accept as truth? Is it something that we can just observe and be like, oh wow, I recognize that I'm feeling that was bad because I was told when I was 7 by my mother that my head voice sounds bad, and I did that in head voice, so it sounded bad. Okay, cool. And just kind of observe what you're noticing, rather than like, okay, let's fix all of these little things, because I think it's really important for them to have those skills, but also to be able to sing something and just be like, cool, that existed, what's next? And not
Yeah.
get stuck in all of it like we tend to when we're doing an improvisation, and we look back and we're like, I could have done all of that so much better. Yeah, but you were improving something brand new. It is what it is. Let's move on.
Well, and also kind of the question that I ask a student when they have made a new sound and they're unsure about it, they're giving you that look like, and you're going, yes, that was brilliant, that was beautiful. And they're like, what? Um, I always ask them, well, did it hurt?
Hmm.
Was that physically painful?
Hmm.
Because really that's all I care about. If it was causing you pain physically and was hurting you, then I don't want to repeat that. But
Hmm.
other than that, I don't care. Like, all the sounds were great. You made a great sound. So
Yeah.
all of it
Or
counts. It
even
all
if it
counts.
wasn't a great sound, like
Yeah.
aesthetically perfect for the song that you're making or whatever. If it didn't hurt, that's a usable sound at some point. Because I
Mhm.
mean, yes, there is, I think, a capital A aesthetic importance in singing. We're going for, this is what a lot of people are going to like, especially if you're working with people who are on like a professional track. But at the same time, the best opera singers make some disgusting sounds every once in a while because emotions can get gross. And I
Mm.
think that if everything that we're communicating is just this beautiful singing all the time, that's just, it fits these very prescribed sound qualities, we're going to miss out on so much of the range of emotion that humans are capable of. And so if something doesn't hurt to make, even if it doesn't sound good to everyone, it still might be a usable thing. We just need to label it as like, oh, this is what that sound is. It doesn't
Yes.
hurt, so it's usable. But I do
Kinda.
think that the more of those sounds that you find, like with my students, that's most of what I do is let's just explore all of the different sounds you can make that don't hurt at all. And then there
Mhm.
becomes a point where it's like, cool, you can make a lot of sounds. Let's get picky about what ones you're using most of the time now. But I
I
think
love
that
that.
there's so much value in just labeling, this is this sound. It's not bad. It's what it is. This is this sound. It hurt. Let's not go for it again. This is this sound. It's beautiful. Let's try to use it a lot.
I love that. Well, it's interesting. I told you I had the opportunity to coach some cheerleaders this week. I've worked in the school systems before, worked with lots of teenagers and coached musical theater, but I've never worked with a group of cheerleaders before. And it was fascinating to me because like we always talk about, how you do anything is how you do everything, your favorite quote, right? And so walking in there with these cheerleaders, my job was to help them smile. Okay?
Mm,
Basically, get them to smile, get them to have energy and be bright and like Disneyland, explosive, excited. You know, we went on and on about that for a while, getting them to smile and finding the happy. But then I noticed that, well, there was a girl that came in late and she was sobbing, and I was worried, what might be going on. And then I saw the coach just told me that she was just upset with herself for being late. So,
hmm
because the consequences are pretty heavy if you're late and it's competition season. So, okay, I kind of let that go, but it was still in my mind. And I looked at the girls and I saw that there were definitely other emotions happening in between the smiles. And so I had them pause and explore that for a minute, explore the extreme opposite, because if all you, like you were saying, if all you ever do is the pretty stuff, the good stuff, you're missing out on a wide range of
hmm
color and emotion and depth. And it was
hmm
funny because as soon as I had them all pick a character that they were going to have as their cheerleader character, that when they're on the mat, this is them, and when they're off, that's them, which actors are very familiar with. That's very standard practice. But I think for them, it was really new. And they all just kind of snapped into this like, wow, I can be all of this because I'm on the mat now, and I can be somebody totally different. So
hmm
anyway, it was just kind of fun because then they brought out their really sassy side and their really peppy side, and there were lots of just more range
Which
happening,
is
and
so
then it
much more
made everything so much
interesting.
more exciting.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
yes, I don't
I
want
mean,
to
it's
see
interesting
robots.
just looking at at a different field at dance instead of singing. There are still those similar, this is the way that you're supposed to look kind of
Hmm.
aesthetic preferences within it. And so I'm not sure if the rules are the same for dance as they are for cheer or anything. Cause like
They
you
all have
said,
their
like
own.
they all want to have like that big smile all the time. But I'm not a great dancer, but I watch a lot of dance because I watch a lot of NBA. And what I see on NBA is just like, here's the Brooklyn Nets dancers, and then here's the Jazz dancers, and here's this other dancer. And so I see all of these different squads throughout the year. And the people who are the most interesting, yes, they're like great physical movers and stuff, but their faces are just hugely different. Of like, for years, the Jazz were smile the whole time, smile, smile, smile.
Uh-huh.
And they were the most boring to watch in the league. Sorry. And
Yes,
like the
yes.
people who were able to be that just show everything on their face and switch between segments and like match their face to the energy of the song, it's so much more captivating.
the dark has to balance out the light, because if it's just bright all the time, it's blinding. But your eye, your emotions, just like your eyes, need time to adjust, and your ears do the same thing. If everything is top bright all the time, so perfect, so happy, so peppy, it's exhausting, and you don't even realize you're tired, because there's a difference between lifting and wearing out. I think, sometimes you watch a performance and you just feel good because you've been uplifted by somebody's energy, but that energy has many ranges, many peaks and values. Whereas sometimes if it's just blasted at you the entire time, you may have been happy for a minute, but you leave kind of numb and exhausted. And so teaching singers to really explore those peaks and valleys and be okay with that, be okay with the ugly sounds and the pretty sounds. They're all, like you said, they're all usable, and it's fine.
Yeah.
You can do it.
And
Only
they're
the
not
ones
always
we don't
mistakes.
want to repeat are the painful ones. Yes, they're not
Exactly.
mistakes.
Yeah.
Hey, if you like this podcast, we like you. We're so glad that you're here listening to us. And if you would like to hear more, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as well as please leave us a review. We would love to hear what you think. You can also reach us at media@ivtom.org if you have questions, things you'd like answered on the show, or guests you would like to see us have on here. And if you want to learn more about IvTom, go to ivtom.org. That's IVTOM.org. And if you're a member, you can also purchase past conference videos to review all of the fancy science stuff that we talk about.
Even if
or
you're
if you
not a
just want
member.
more knowledge. Oh, can you get it if you're not a member? Oh my
You
goodness.
just have
We're
to
so
buy
nice.
it. Yes.
See, we're all about sharing. This is good. We'll share with you. Even if you're not a member, we like you. We're just so glad you're here. Anyway, have a fabulous week. You can find Sam at vocalese.net. You can find me at breakthrough-studios.com. And we will see you next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast, brought to you by IvTom, International Voice Teachers of Mix. Your co-hosts are Sam Johnson and Aimee Geddes. Learn more about IvTom at ivtom.org and find Sam Johnson at vocalese.net and Aimee Geddes at breakthrough-studios.com. Voiceover and theme song by Maz Mazak, and this podcast is edited by Amber. You have been listening to
The Voice Teacher Podcast.